The fire burning red in a Georgia representing if it comes hard here. You know. Big up Kidaki, Buxton massive. Hey Babylon boy, you going like you like son. Red.
Guyana and Guyanese, at home and abroad. Tune in to Guyanese Morning Time, hosted by Kadaki Amsterdam, where the sun always shines. Guyanese Morning Time, the people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. We rise up early morning watching Comes TV, where wisdom and knowledge, yes, it is the key. Exposing corruptions over land and sea, where the wicked politicians they try to trick me. Guyana is a land for everybody. With 6 races should live in harmony. Is one set of people getting oil money. Is one set of people doing the thievery. Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. This is a program that you all can see. Sharing your views and your integrity. Like it, comment and share it all around. Pass it to your neighbor, safe and sound. A sad situation going on in this town. The voice of the people is getting trampled down. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, which has ordained me to sing. I say, Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, fooling the people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. Stop fooling people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. I say, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, they got Breakford, Bork and Mark Benchcop. David Hines and Kadaki Amsterdam, Sherrod Duncan, Nigel London, Normal Brown and Gavin Matthews. Big up Paslow, Port People Governor, Simona Brooms, Robin Simpson, Hampton Green and Winston Jordan. And yes, we can go right on and on. Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again.
The relatives and friends of young Wyndham Bacchus, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of our in Boston, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of Peter Headley, they deserve justice.
And so when we say that Guyana is an apartheid state, we have the evidence to show.
Never me not corrupt. In a bit every morning. Now because you money down, you come with conniving morning. Then you had your pocket full. In a bit every morning. Now because you money down, you hustle for tell me morning. Yes, morning, neighbor. Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, I know what you conniving morning. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me walk. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. This is all the money that me walk. I said money, neighbor. Money, neighbor, money. Money, neighbor, money. Money, I know what you can I be money. Oh, Joseph.
All right, so today we are here at Club Twilight up in Buxton, and we are here to talk about all that's going on up here. Trust me, if you are on the East Coast, you're in Buxton, you're in Tongue, you're looking for a place to get away to, this is the place. The Cutters, mwah. Listen, I'll be having some just now again. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, the ambience is beautiful, fully air conditioned. The decor is on point. The music's on point. Everything's on point. It's just me. I need some work. But everything else that belongs to this club here is on point. So if you want to find a nice little place where you can just drive out of town and have some drinks, have some food, you can call, you can order your stuff and just take it. You don't have to stay. Or if you want to stay here, that's what's up. And of course, they have special events for Valentine's. You can rent a hall. You can rent a hall, honey. You can rent a hall for weddings, for birthday parties, to have a bash. I hope he edits that out. But you know, whatever it is, this is definitely the place to be. So it's on Sideline Dam. You definitely want to ensure that you check this place out. But it's on your to-do list. All right, on your to-do list. This is definitely the place to check out, you know, a really cool, chill spot here in Buxton. I like this. This is Buxton needed this. We needed this. I needed this. You definitely need it too. Thank you.
Comes audio son. You burn this wine when I want you shine. The tree of life, them I want you climb, cause them heart no kind. Comes, I say them heart no kind. Buxton Massive. Kidaki, read that.
You can get meat anywhere, but for the best cuts of chicken, beef, pork, mutton, and lots more, check out T&W Harris Butcher Shop, located in the East Ramveld Market Meat section. Call us on 609-7168, 641-4494. Ask for Rastaman. T&W Harris Butcher Shop for the best in fresh cut meats and lots more.
It's the PNCR fundraising bingo on Sunday, the 27th of October at Congress Place of Fire from 2 p.m. Over $5 million to be won. There will be 20 straight games at $100,000 per game, 3 letter games at $200,000 per game, 3 coverall games at $1 million per game. Tickets are $6,000. 1 ticket gets you 6 playing cards. Remember, it's the PNCR Big Fundraising Bingo on Sunday, the 27th of October at Congress Place of Fire from 2 p.m.
Friday, November 1st, the place to be is at Club Twilight. Yours truly, Trinidad Madman. I will be coming to Guyana for the first time, live and alive in living colors, in Buxton at Twilight Sideline Dam for an event called Short Pants and Skirts. So ladies, or they come out in all their numbers, Twilight Sideline Dam in Buxton, East Coast Guyana. Buxton is going to be on a shutdown. So ladies, get all your short pants and skirts. Friday, November 1st. The place to be is at Club Twilight.
It's the PNCR fundraising bingo on Sunday, the 27th of October at Congress Place of Fire from 2 p.m.
America, don't brutalize your new children. The immigrants are here to stay. As Rudder says there, that Calypso was inspired by the sodomizing of the Asian immigrant about 2 decades ago, Mr. Louima, and the immigrants are here to stay. Good evening to all of you who are in the Big Apple, as they called it back in the old days. Those of you who are in New York, whether you are in Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, upstate New York, downstate New York, the tri-state area, New Jersey, Connecticut, wherever you are in New York, welcome to tonight's edition of Politics 101. The immigrants are here to stay. The immigrants are under attack again in America. Haitian immigrants are under attack. This time they're accused of eating animals. West Indians have gone to America, have been going to America now for a century. At the turn of the 20th century, there was a small wave of West Indian migration to America. Small wave because at that time, West Indians were going to England, our colonial rulers at that time, so-called mother country. And then as we get into the 1960s and the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, bringing African Americans in line with the American Constitution, making them constitutionally equal citizens. You know, the 13th Amendment ended slavery, the 14th Amendment gave equal protection before the law, and the 15th Amendment give all Americans the right to vote. But those rights conferred on African Americans by the Constitution were denied by the states. States' rights ruled supreme for almost 100 years, and it took the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65 to bring Black Americans in line with the American Constitution. The Voting Rights Act of 65 brought them in line with the 15th Amendment, and the Civil Rights Act of 64 brought them in line with the 14th Amendment. And after African Americans were, in a sense, they won their freedom fight finally, constitutionally. It was no accident that in 1962, Jamaica and Trinidad are becoming independent, and Guyana and Barbados in 66. In many regards, African Americans became independent in 64 and 65. And then there was a wave of migration from the Caribbean to the United States, made possible by the liberation of African Americans. Prior to that, there were tricklers, mainly students who went to the United States to study and remained. But now, after the passage of the Civil Rights and the Voting Rights Act, a wave, go trace it and see how many of your relatives came in the mid to late 60s to America. Many took up residence in New York and Washington, D.C. in particular, other parts of the United States. America has always been hostile to immigrants, whether it was the Chinese who were prevented from coming, the Chinese Immigration Act. And you remember in the early part of the century, immigration to America was based on how many of your kind were in America. So those who were in America in large numbers, Europeans for the most part. They were allowed entry, and so-called minorities like West Indians, not many were allowed. But after the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act, a large wave began to come. So the immigrants have been part of the American milieu for the last 60 years. And in many regards, the immigrants, African Americans, they've grown up politically with us in the Caribbean. Welcome to all of you if you're joining us from Guyana. A little tidbit there on the West Indian connection and Black America West Indian connection. Lots of contradictions, in Guyana. Our Indian brothers and sisters, because of our ethnic problems, do not necessarily embrace Black leadership. But once you jump on that plane and you get into America, you stop being Indian and you become Black. And so, so whether you're African American, Indian American, East Indian American, you become Black once you go through that immigration. You're no longer Indian Guyanese. I mean, America doesn't have any ethnic group called Indian or anything like that. You become Black. We noticed that some PPP members and supporters in Queens are urging Indians to vote for the Republicans, to vote for Trump and the Republicans, because they claim that the Republicans were good. Not I say that, they were saying it. I saw the video, they had this rally, and so had it not been for the Americans, the PPP would not have been in power today. Had it not been for the Republicans, the PPP would not have been in power today. Mouth open story jump out. Of course, so many of us have been saying it was regime change, but these things come out in very incidental ways. So they're urging East Indians to vote Republican, because if Trump comes back to power, then the PPP is guaranteed power whenever the elections are held. That's the nature of our politics. We'll see what our East Indian brothers and sisters in Queens and other parts of America do. Welcome to Politics 101. It's a Tuesday evening, and Dr. Henry Jeffrey is here with us. We have a lot to talk about. There is still raging debate over the president's announcements in the National Assembly last week. Many said that they went to the National Assembly to launch the PPP campaign. So much for paramountcy of the party. He launched his campaign using ideas from the opposition, the cash transfer from the WPA, Burnham's free education to the university, and raising the minimum wage to $100,000. All those are ideas that have been advanced by the opposition, and the president went there and rolled them out. Lots of debate, and because when something doesn't belong to you, you're not necessarily invested in the integrity of the thing. You're using the thing because it can benefit you. What pushed the PPP to embrace ideas by the opposition in such an open, brazen way? Note when Thomas and the WPA came out with the cash transfer, Vice President Jagdeo said it was technically unsound and it could not be implemented before 2030, if ever. He wasn't hopeful. And of course, the other one, the big man, You know, Teacher George said, you know, he mouth a run, he got away bib. Nandlal said that cash transfers will break up family and it will turn Guyanese into parasites. Here's the PPP, now embracing the thing that will break up family, that will turn Guyanese into parasites, and that is technically unsound. So what has gone on? What has caused this big, massive change? We'll ask Dr. Henry Jeffrey, who is a political scientist, but also knows something about the PPP and how that organization works. Lots of debate on how the $200,000 will be distributed, etc., etc. WPA had a press conference yesterday, and we made it very clear that you can't fight for something, and now the government has initiated it, deny your thing. So we said it is a baby step forward, and we outlined what needs to be done to make the cash transfers meaningful. I remember the time we came out with the cash transfer, Jeffrey had pointed to us that he had spoken about the cash transfer, and so he knows something about it. So we'll talk a little bit about how that cash transfer is going to work. Free tuition to the University of Guyana. Again, Burnham's idea. The PPP discontinued it, and now they have resumed it. It is politics. Good evening to all of you, and welcome to Politics 101 on a Tuesday evening. This is the place to be at this time during the week, and we continue to talk about politics. We know sometimes you get you all get very frustrated and think that sometimes we talk too much and we need action. We need to go on the streets and all of that. All of that is part of politics. But don't underestimate ideas. I saw some PNC young people quarreling that there's some black young people who are praising Ali for the cash transfer and so on. And my answer to those young PNC people, when you left your coop open and looking in somebody else's coop, people walking on you thing, your chicken gonna be in trouble. Mongoose are gonna go in and eat your chicken. Of course, when the Professor Thomas launched the idea, the leadership of the PNC and the government at that time frowned on it. They never owned it. It was left to the WPA to keep it alive, along with a couple of people, you know, individuals, Lincoln Lewis and others, who, you know, they didn't own it. And of course, the WPA's voice is not as large. So the general base, some of them obviously innocently don't know that it's an opposition idea. Oil wasn't flowing at that time, but the least that our government could have done was, as we asked them to do, is to go to Parliament with a bill enshrining cash transfers in law, so that whichever government comes after them would have to either obey the law or pass a law overriding it. We didn't do that, unfortunately. So the PPP now can brazenly pretend as though the idea is theirs. And some of our supporters innocently believe so. But anyhow, we are here, and we have to pick up the pieces and move on. Interesting times. Let me bring in Dr. Henry Jeffrey. Dr. Jeffrey, good evening.
Hi, David, and hi to your audience also.
Yes. Dr. Jeffrey, you, as I said in my introduction, you know something about the PPP. You're, of course, well, I think once you told me you aren't a political scientist of such. But anyhow, you understand politics and you know the PPP. Here's the president going to the National Assembly and making some national pronouncements. The fact that he went to the parliament to do it, to the National Assembly to do it, means that he attached a lot of importance to it. And he headlined his announcements with two ideas that are from the opposition, the cash transfer and the free education at the University of Guyana. It rescinded the free education and it poo-pooed the cash transfer when it was first floated by Thomas and the WPA. Your knowledge of the PPP, what do you think could have caused this about turn, and it must have happened in recent times because in the budget, they didn't talk about cash transfer and all that kind of stuff. So clearly, whatever happened would have happened in recent times. Your knowledge of the PPP, your knowledge of Guyanese politics, what has happened? What changed?
What changed, David, is that we are coming to a next election. That's what changed. And the PPP, there has been an upsurge of notions that the working class is our worst off in an oil economy comparatively. Therefore, they need to do something. And that was the only, what I can say, way for them to go about what satisfying the public belief that people are getting poorer, but in their own context. They're not putting in place anything that will benefit you in the long run. They're giving you a one-off cash transfer. So the PPP comes now and it says, you have a one-off cash transfer. I'm not giving you this till next year though, which is sensible because if you give anybody before Christmas and then they spend it all out by January, you're in deep problem. You gotta find something else. And so they'll have to give you next year. But they're not giving you anything that is of great. The minute they have given it, I would say, even before they give it to you, you become poorer relatively to than what you were. When they give relatively to the rest of the population, those who have, when you give to the rich, $200,000, they put it in the bank or they invest it. They get richer. When you give to the poor man that can hardly have anything, $200,000, he go and spend it, he got to buy food, he got all this thing, he remains the same. So he remains the same, but the rich man gets richer because he doesn't need to spend that. He got that. The PPP is not doing anything here to disrupt their decades-long thing to keep some people poor in the interest of winning their votes. They're nothing whatsoever. And let me go back a little bit. You talk about this cash transfer. And this is why what they are doing is so, in a time, disgusting. The PPP signed on to the United Nations the development goals. No? The first goal said that you should have some kind of cash transfer. And that's 2016. The first goal said there should be a floor that nobody should fall beyond, that everybody should be able to live a life and a decent life in this, not in poverty in their own country. And they call upon states, all states, the PPP signed on to this in 2016. You said I did something on 27, but it's not just a result of what was already in the United Nations and what the PPP has already signed on to. The PPP signed on to saying they will provide a floor for all Guyanese, if they can afford it, of course, and relative to what they can afford. Well, they can afford it, but you think they provide a floor for you for lifelong? No, because that would make you almost independent of them, because you will have decent food, you will have decent housing, etc. And they don't want that. They want you to run to them for everything they got. So the result is that what they are doing here is nothing at what they promised the UN to do in 2016. They should provide a floor under which no Guyanese, a financial, a livable floor, no Guyanese should fall below. And that is what they have not done. All they have done is come and give you some money that relatively might take you poorer than you are already. So I saw it. I said, yes, it's your money. You got to take it. I'll take it. I suppose you'll take it. Are you a resident? Are you a household in Guyana, by the way?
Yes, I am.
Now, with all this confusion that's going around, they have not substantially put Guyana, there is no citizen in Guyana, with them talking about all this we are making now, that should go to bed or go to sleep or not have a decent life, even they work or not. It's happening in the Middle East. Even if they work or not, there should be no citizens. The United Nations said that the PPP signed on to the United Nations Development Goals. But they don't want to do it. Because if they only do that, people are not going to be as crawling to them for the $10 and $5. We got a nice house. Well, not nice, but sufficient to live on. A floor, they call it. And that is the first goal, and that was raised by the French, and that was raised, I think by the French, if my memory tells me right. I think by the French. It was raised by the French since about 2012, saying we have enough wealth in the world today for no citizen to have to go to sleep without, without proper food, proper shelter and all that. The PPP doesn't want to provide that for you. If they wanted to provide it for you, and that's why I said on my article in 2017 when I was writing, I said, start, and not, I didn't suggest it. The United Nations study says if the oil countries put 10% of their wealth aside to look after the poor in that way, nobody will go to sleep in those countries. The people don't want that. The people has not done that. All it's done is get like all the cash transfer, just give you when they feel like, take it back when they feel like, don't do it when they feel like. The PPP is using people as a pawn. And this, as I said, they signed on to the United Nations Development Goal that a cash transfer is necessary. Necessary to stop poverty in your country if you can afford it. But if you can't afford it now, I don't know when we can afford it.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here making reference to the United Nations Sustainable Goal.
Development goals.
Development goal. It's there on the United Nations website. You can see it there.
Go check it. It's number one.
Right. It's there, and so the PPP has signed on to it. Obviously, when the idea was first raised in a public, dramatic way by Clive Thomas in 2018, they pretended that they didn't know that it was part of the UN development goal. Dr. Jeffrey, there are lots of debate as to whether cash transfer should be given to households or to individuals. Is that a necessary debate? And if so, where do you stand?
Remember, I say try your best and take it if you can get it.
Yes.
But that what they're talking about, I don't think I read some Clive thing. I know that is not what we intended.
No.
The intention was to give people one time.
No.
And it was to be institutionalized.
That's right.
If you want, when I said 10%, remember I'm writing in 2017, oil just found, there's no oil. Clive writing in 2018, oil, nothing flowing. The question was that if you give 10% of what you got, start with the poorest. Start with the poorest. Don't worry that we give the Henry Jeffries and everybody else. Start with the poorest people. And let's see. And do it in a fashion that would develop, but always 10% of what you get from the oil wells. And you know whose ideas was that? That was writers from the United Nations. If these people give 10% of their oil well to this, you can do this. Now today we are getting much more. Many more people would have been benefiting. Many more people wouldn't have to sleep. We wouldn't have to have that thing in Starbucks. This, that. Yes, we would have the prices going up and all of that and all of that. And that would, in a sense, would always happen. But you wouldn't have a whole lot of really, really poor people on the streets struggling, can hardly get food, can hardly get that sort of thing, running to the PPP and PPP cutting their salary, taking back this, trying to, oh, come on, look, we live in these things are not forgotten. In a sense, we do not live in a country that, they're talking about one Ghana, but we do not live in a country that attempts to treat everybody as a one Ghana. That's it. Some people want to exploit the other side. And that is the problem. So, no. So, they have come up, well, it's about them another cash grants, like you give children cash this and you did. And all I can say to you, it will be challenging. It will no doubt have corruption in it all over the place because they have not even properly defined yet what is a household. What is a household? I just come from my place at Pleasant at the line top, and that's what people talking about. Who is a household? And there's a whole lot of joke being made. I don't divide my house in two. The PVV had just come up with this thing now. It's Christmas time. They want you to feel good for Christmas without giving you the goodies for Christmas. They want to give you after Christmas. It's a public relations strategy. You can feel good without having, indeed, you might well feel good before you have something that if they give you and it's finished. So when you spend out all your money for Christmas, you must say, I still got something up the road. It's just nonsense. If they really want to stick with what they're signed to the United Nations, stick to it. Start with everybody that's poor. Stick to it. Don't bother with what Jeffrey said. Maybe don't want what WPA said. Stick to what you signed to about seeing that nobody lives below a certain level in this society. That is what you should stick to. Tuition-free
university education from January?
Yes, but that was always a question of when you can afford it. Remember, I was there when that thing happened. Mm-hmm. I mean, but remember, it's the United Nations itself, again, and going back to this, who was saying the loans you are getting, you can't get to the rich. And you remember, the privilege. I think that is how they were putting it. And therefore, the privilege, even health. they were saying you got to get cost recovery. Remember the statement?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And this came from the IMF, from them. You got to get cost recovery so you can pay back your debt. And look, now that was part of the project. That was happening. That was projected since the PNC was in 92. It was projected since the PNC was in office, because I went to the International Financial Institution, and they were big on cost recovery. But cost recovery, all right, I'm not quarreling them. I know sufficient economics to do that. I am saying that there is a time that comes when that stops being necessary, and therefore, I suppose, what else can you do? But it must. But they are doing it again. The PPP got a thing called gold that is giving as much money at the university. You would have thought if it had a university and the thing in mind, it would have given the university the kind of resources they're spending in gold. But that is not their interest. Their interest is to do things under which they got control. If they had a choice, all the ministries can disappear and just let them sit down at Freedom House or wherever and just manage the country they feel like. That's it. So the time has come now for, you have money. Everybody knows that. And the way they're going about it, without sitting down and talking to civil society, without talking to, they hardly want to talk to the real opposition. They're closing down the public committee. No, it's they alone doing this.
In case you're just joining us, we are here on Politics 101 on a Tuesday night. Dr. Henry Jeffrey, we are talking about the president's announcement last week, Thursday, I think it was, and it has been dominating the news cycle since then. And Dr. Jeffrey's weighing in on those issues here this evening. Please share the link and let those who are not here yet know that we are on. Dr. Jeffrey, you've been big on changing the governance system, and you're saying change it before we go into another election. Have some form of shared governance. You have also been supportive of a clean voters list, biometrics, and so forth. And these are things that you're saying the opposition ought to draw a line in the sand and say, we want them before election. No, that, and part of the opposition hesitancy has been that, look, the PPP is not going to agree to these things. It's not going to agree to shared governance before the election. It's not going to agree to biometrics and a clean voters list. And I suppose if you were here last week, Tuesday, and we were talking about cash transfers, we would have been saying the PPP would not agree to cash transfers. So you know where I'm going with the drift of my question. Do you think that on the evidence of what has happened there in the last couple of days, that the opposition should be much more aggressive on those two issues, the issues of shared governance, the issue of shared governance, and the issue of election reform?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. It's not Henry Jeffrey or the WPA saying the United States telling them so. Carter been telling them so. Carter left the country saying they don't want to do it, and the country will go nowhere if they do it. The country is gone nowhere, and Carter come back to try to do us whatever. So I am telling you, this is not you or I. This is a reality of countries like Guyana. There is no separation of power because I don't know, every day, almost every day you wake up, editorials. We must hold the government accountable. One young lady in your, well, now your party, PNC, said only God can help us share. She ended up. You know, I said, this is amazing. And she turns to God because it's only He can help us out of this mess. Now, the populace, they have leverage on the government only at election time. So, but you can't wait 5 years when a government doing anything they want. And by the way, it's not that your government, they do what they like to. I can show you had to they walk around the country, people having begging people to forgive them. But my thing is, I'm not talking about the PNC government or the PPP government now. I am saying in the meanwhile, in the midterm, this is not an homogeneous society like Barbados. In the midterm, all you have is an ethnic government, a government of one ethnicity, doing what it has. Don't fool yourself. It will have to do things to support its constituents, and it's not going to do it at their anything for you at their expense. Believe you me. So effectively, you might say that a lot of PNC supporters believe that the PNC has forgotten that, but that's not the point. The point is that you cannot have a situation such as this in the midterm. Louis Sorata tell that in the midterm, nobody's in control. Nobody. And the PPP, you can talk how much you like. You can say what the people do in Ireland. You can say how corrupt they are. Next time when you go to election, they are same amount of vote, maybe more. So nobody's there to hold them accountable. Who's going to hold accountable? Well, it's got to be like in Suriname, because Santoki can't do anything he like because he got Brunswick sitting there.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here.
And that is why you have no way of holding government accountable. You can write what you like all day. Every minute you pick up the government should be held accountable. And then guess who they expect to hold? God, poor Aubrey. I guess how they expect him to hold him accountable. Talk a lot. And the government listen to him. They want to talk about that. Because I don't see anything else. You got to change the system that put you in position to hold them accountable. This is not a normal, homogeneous society. So that's my position on that issue. Of course, there's a major problem. You know, when these people walk on, well, I have said so. I have said that the PPP is essentially, trying to impoverish African Guyanese to force them to vote for them. I have said so. I have shown this. I think every institution. Look at what they did to the Linden, the bauxite fund. You remember the pension fund? Yeah. Sam himself tell us what they did. When the unions went to them and said, look, let's use this pension fund to develop people and so on. Here they come, they say, oh, well, let's us ask the people. And if they're democratic, why do you think people are going to say if you ask them democratically if they want their money? Yeah, let them ask us democratically if they should give us our oil money and then tax us. The UN has a proposal that says, really, to make the people really involved with the oil, give them all, share it out to them, and then tax them for what you want. Well, let them try that. Let any government try that. See what the people go say. Now vote to get the money. So they did that. And where's the bauxite fund? Disappeared. Maybe Lincoln used to say, Lincoln, well, he not used to, he can't change that now, that was either a fact or not. He said that it must be the largest sum of money that owned by Africans in Guyana. They destroyed it.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here, weighing in on the president's announcements in Parliament. Dr. Jeffrey, let's let's change course a little bit and go back in time. I intimated to you before we started the program that I love your column this past week. Part of it because it's political history, and I'm a true political historian, because I think it tells us a lot. History, especially in a place like Guyana, where we have not developed the culture of institutionalize certain things. I mean, I have been teaching in the United States of America, and you teach the founding fathers over and over and over and over and over. All right, and so there is a way in which, at the level of the masses, certain things are entrenched. Let me bring up this on screen here. This is the Guyana graphic, December 18th, 1964. Burnham may be the new premier. PNC accepts the U.S. offer. This is the days going on. And then the next big article there on the front page, Jagan hopes for PNC coalition. And the reason I put this up here, and I'm going to leave it there for a minute so that the audience can digest it. I think it was last week I was pointing out that you have today the PPP and its supporters, you know, coursing down Burnham, cursing out the PNC. They don't want to share power with the PNC because there's no trust. And I made the point that the PNC and Burnham, who you all cussing down, Jagan was prepared to serve as prime minister, first of all as deputy prime minister to Burnham in the 1960s, early 1960s. You can go in the Western Trial and see his proposal there that he made in 1963 to the PNC. And as late as 1964, on the eve of the PNC taking power, the coalition, he was hoping to, if the PPP can go into coalition with them. So here is these people who you're saying you have to have trust first before you can have shared governance. Your guru, your God, wanted to serve as deputy prime minister in 1964 under Burnham. And then we come now to 1976, 77 with the National Patriotic Front. And you wrote on that this past weekend, where again, Jagan was prepared to serve under Burnham. And then the 1985, Halim Majid writes a lot about that, the fatherhood government, as they called it, which unfortunately Burnham died. Hoyt came in and he scuttled it. But again, Jagan was prepared to serve under Burnham. It's not Jeffrey saying it, it's not David Hines saying it, it's there on the screen. It's there on the screen. Jagan hoped for a PNC, a PPP PNC coalition. I suppose I've said enough, Dr. Jeffrey. And you wrote your column this weekend talking about this 1976-77 moment. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, there were always people in the PNC who said they should never join with the US from day one. From day one.
I'll tell you a story about that just now.
Right.
Go ahead.
So in 60, you mentioned 64 there.
Yes.
When they were, before the 64, when Jagan was offered by the British, you say Burnham was prepared to serve as the prime minister. Jagan was offered by the British to have a coalition government.
Yes.
But he rejected it.
Yes.
Well, we know now why he rejected it.
Because of the letter he sent.
He already sent the letter to the Soviets. Probably sent to Karen, Guyana, and everybody hook, line, and sinker into the Soviet camp. So he rejected it. At the time, I thought he's a bit thing, but later he came around back, and essentially he did that. thing. What by 1976, remember 1976, they're grabbing, I'm so 29, 30. I am not in, I am doing this research thing, yes, I am. And there got people, we were working at the Office of General Secretary in Planning and Research. Everybody there worked for the more or less talk to Jig, and we got to get things together because, you know, Ghana has been like this. And that's why I said it was more a moral thing than understanding it as a total necessity. But people, all of us were there, we were saying, this should happen. Shabatin beat me in Sophia and said, what are you people telling the leader they're going to overthrow we? Shab. Yeah, you know, so I don't know that we were telling leader. If you ask me, McDavid was doing more of the telling. He's the boss. So it's easy me Burnham all the time to do the telling. I mean, how it was discussed, that's what I would say, and there was nobody that did not support it. But when Sharp told me that, I said, and this happened after Dr. Reed, and I said in my article, Dr. Reed said the same thing to me when he trying to get me to go and talk with Burnham, to share the Jager. And then the thing break up again because like Corbyn said, he's going to write a book about it, about that issue. So maybe I shouldn't say no more. But the point is, how they break up again, that's another story. That's a tragedy for what happened to the PPP there. And that's why it's a tragedy for what, if that is this very, very issue, it is a tragedy. Because if the PPP broke it up for foolishness, for no good reason, Burnham gave in to them. Burnham gave in to them, and it was broken up. So the PNC has always had people, as I said, that want to be in the, that think the PPP is the right group to be with. And you have always had people in the PPP that thought that was possible. And the 1980 Constitution was constructed according to what Jagger wanted. Look at the 1980 Constitution. It's constructed just for what Jagger wants. The 1980 Constitution more or less said that the Prime Minister will run the country. And that's why I was surprised when your lot got that opportunity and didn't take it. 1980 Constitution almost precise what Jagger was arguing for. Burnham would have been almost the titular president. Well, never going to be titular, but you understand, he still got power, but Jagger would have run the country, Burnham would have relaxed himself. And meet after the attack, the two of them would have reached and talk, and Burnham, let Jagger do the hard work. When your party came to power, I said, these chaps got opportunity. Hey, you got Moses, right? You got two shots. You have something in your constitution. You promised in your constitution to share power, which is the most important one. But now you also had a position where you are saying to the country, sharing, we are already doing that. Look, we have all these baby parties. Sorry, David. We are already doing that. But guess what? You make an agreement with the WPA that was going to change things, you said the laws, you got it. Which law? Which law would I tell you that? I mean, in Jagan allow everybody. As I told you on this program before, everybody can shape. You can do it informally until you change the law. Why is it just like, is that the intention? And not only that, the batak of the WPA. Oh, they got too much. They ain't got this. It was quite clear that this wasn't just a matter of law. It was a a belief in the PNC that the WPA was getting more than they should get, and then there was even that we don't need them no more and all that. Yeah.
You mean the AFC?
The AFC, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I mean, at that time, I said, it's alarming. These people have an opportunity to make Moses Nakamoto the president, the prime minister, and stay aside. Let you run the country. We can't run it without you having say, and fundamental say don't mean you gotta make decision every day. Look at the French president. You see the French president, he got prime ministers around the country. Right, exactly. And so I said, these people are losing their mind. Essentially, let him run the country. Build the WPA, build the WPA. If you want to talk about ethnic thing, build it. Build the WPA, the AFC to win the Indian votes. Instead of that, they crush the AFC. Now the AFC is up. I don't know where they're going with all what they're talking, but that is it. They crush them.
I heard Dominique Gaskin last night on a program, and I chuckled because Dominique said he's no longer with the AFC, but he says if the AFC is going to go by itself in this election, it will draw votes from the opposition base because there is little or no vote to get from the Indian support base of the PPP. And if he were advising the AFC, will advise the AFC to concentrate on the African community. And of course, he said that Nigeria is more popular than Aubrey and myself, and so he would get forced to that. But I chuckled because I got a lot of cuss down for suggesting that the opposition should, in the first instance, solidify its own base. And people feel that I was being racist and all kind of stupidness. But I heard him, Dominique, last night talking about that. Dr. Jeffrey, you are of course very strong. And before I go on, let me just say I heard David Patterson on this issue. He said after the big noise with the fact that the Granger said that the Constitution precludes Moses from chairing the cabinet and so on, that what he in effect did internally was that he would start the cabinet meetings, and then after the first introductory minutes, turn it over to Moses. That's how they resolved it internally. But they never made that public because the damage was already done, as you pointed out. And they didn't even bother to make it public that, they kind of came to some kind of agreement internally.
But David, let me say this. Note that move, I don't think it was politically planned. It part of the negotiations, but that had to be made public to be significant. It would not. This thing is not a little thing between the PNC and the AFC. So no, to me, significant. The population had to know about it. To set up to me, we make a deal and this can happen, is again to demonstrate naivety. It can only make a difference if the population knows that Moses is running the show. It will make no difference. They sit down there and think Moses is running the show. What's going on? It's a waste of time. So, these things are said in this kind of a way, and you said it can't be real. It just cannot be real. Whatsoever it is, as you were saying, go on.
Yes. And so I just wanted to point that out, that they had some kind of, but you're correct. You're correct. This was a matter that should have been in the public space. And I'm a member of a party that was part of the coalition. I never knew that until I heard Patterson with it about a month ago. on one of the programs. Dr. Jeffrey, is there any appetite? Is there any appetite in the country for both at the level of the leadership and at the level of the followership? Is there any appetite for a political solution that goes towards shared governance?
Remember, shared governance is an elite business.
Yes.
So public, there's no public. You got Indian public and African public. So there's don't have a public appetite. If the PPP come up tomorrow and say, yeah, we're going to have shared government, you're going to have it. Any other store and or the PNC. So effectively you're going to have it. So the last number, there's no public. There's Indian public and black public. So effectively, that is what happening here. If it's for the parties, elite confusion. And that's why, not Jeffrey, the world is saying that you need to have a more inclusive governance. They're not talking no public. And if the minute you introduce that concept, you introduce a whole lot of rigmarole, because then you're going to try to use this notion of public involvement to say that's why they are denying. Let me tell you, you already heard from Nandila. Oh, well, we will take it to the public. And depend on what the public says, that is what there's no public, period. There's no universal public opinion in Guyana. It's done. You got Indian opinion and you got black opinion, African opinion. That's why you can't hold government accountable. That's why.
I put on the screen there another clip, and thanks to my comrade Dr. Nigel Westmus, who is our in-house archivist, and he has this tremendous skill, and he has gone into all these newspapers and pull up these things. You mentioned at the beginning of this program, Dr. Jeffrey, about the parliament and the way in which the PPP is closing down the Public Accounts Committee and, in a sense, rendering the parliament non-functional. Now, this is the PPP, the Guyana Graphic, October 21st, 1966. And so the PPP is complaining that the parliament barely functions.
In Britain, the parliament, you know what Britain is sometimes called, it's called a parliamentary dictatorship, largely because the party with the majority does what it likes for the most part. And just what's happening now. The trouble with Britain is that it is an homogeneous society.
Yes.
And that doesn't matter as much. Here you got no public opinion like to overthrow Boris Johnson. You see how the public opinion rally and suddenly turn against Boris in large numbers. Here you don't have a public opinion. And that's why the system needs to change. You can't have a system that allows a one-seat majority to spend out all the country. You have to change it. It has to change. No, there's nothing to hold the government accountable. In the meantime, during election, nothing. Nothing. And in Britain, there is also nothing. It's like an electoral dictatorship one, parliamentarian call it. The people do what the cabinet says, but it is not going to be the right system for a country like ours. So that's not surprising to me. And it wasn't functioning. It was functioning, but it's how it functioned. You know, it was there. Everybody used to pick up the bag and go in and say, you remember how many times I said Parliament is a waste of time? Indeed, I even advise not to go to no parliament, mobilize the people around and put somebody else in parliament. I said, it's a waste of time. I've been there for 17 years. It's nonsense. The PPP carry a budget to Parliament and it comes out to the budget just like it takes it. That can't happen in Suriname. In Suriname, you got to take 3 months. And all started discourse and all sort of thing got to take place. You can if you a minister said, I'll give you answer, don't like it, that is your business. It's not the cat. You know, David, well, that's what I'm saying. It's madness to try to go back and all right, let me put it this way. The only reason you can want to keep the present constitution is like the PPP. They want total control. They want to think. It's either the others think that they can win a 1 seat and get total control. They should have recognized that they've already lost that game. That game was lost with Sharon Das. Nobody is going to allow them to do that. They can think what they like, but nobody's going to allow them to get 1 seat like the PPP. They have to allow the PPP to get rid of them, but even the PPP is under pressure. And now that's why they're trying to buy black people all over the place, because they say, hey, boss, you are an Indian government. Sit down and believe that. That is the reality. And you are leaving out a whole lot of all ethnicities. You are undermining Amerindian leadership at every turn. You think they never see that? A minute Amerindian leader suddenly he gone. First of all, they give some confusion to do and then he's disappeared. Think people foolish? So unless that is what the PNC, APNU, whatever they want, that is the plan to do precisely what the PPP is doing on the opposite side. Well, I don't see how they can sit down and want a constitution like we have.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here on a Tuesday night. Dr. Jeffrey was that speech in the National Assembly, the launch of the PPP's election campaign.
What? Oh, yeah. Oh no. The PPP wants to do 2 things, I said. It's not launch of the campaign. The PPP has not stopped campaigning from the last election. The truth is that the people
Morning, ever morning, are you morning? Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. I am your host, Kidaki Amsterdam. It's 7 hours 28 on the 16th day of October in the year 2024. Welcome to the program. How you been? How was your yesterday? How is your today? How did you survive yesterday? How did you rest last night? Are you well rested and recuperated? What are your plans for today? Have you made smart plans? Have you set smart goals? How much of those goals were you able to achieve, let's say, in the last 3 weeks, in the last week, in the last day? What are you optimistic about today? How is your health? I'm talking about your health. Thursday, that's tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow evening at 18 hours, we're going to have the first in a series of healthcare programs. Yes, I have 2 specialists who will come on tomorrow, and we're going to start that health program. It's going from 18 hours, which is 6 o'clock, to 19 hours, which is 7, just in time for Dr. Hinds to come on. So that's going to be a Thursday thing. So those of you who are looking for information on healthcare and personal healthcare and personal care and so on and so forth, is the ideal program to tune into. But CAMS TV, the People's Station, we're always working for you. It's Wednesday and Dr. Hinds is in the house, so let me not say too long between yourself and Dr. Hinds. Dr. Hinds, good morning. Welcome to the program. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm fine, thanks. Good morning
glad
to your audience. Yeah.
Glad to know. Very glad to know. So, what's new? What's on the horizon? I see a lot of revelations are being made. I noticed Travis Chase is reporting that somebody has confessed or given information about the murder of Kwame Wing and some of the political / criminal chaos that this country has experienced over the years. We're keeping our eyes on that. I noticed there's a letter out there from the commissioner of police. No, it's not a letter, a statement, a copy of a statement allegedly from the Commissioner of Police, detailing that he actually facilitated the collection and distribution of, I think, about $8 million to Butos during his wedding, or for his wedding. Good. I've seen articles talking about the head of Soku, Karim Bash, being among those senior policemen who collected and handed over large sums of money to Butos, allegedly, as part of his wedding celebrations and so on. So there's a lot that's happening out there. But what is, I want to say, what takes the government, what dominates the discussion is Ali in Parliament. People are still talking about that presentation made by Ali in Parliament, especially when it surrounds the $200,000 per household grant and the criteria for collecting that money. The WPA on Monday hosted a press conference to address some of those promises that Ali made. But like it's normal, a press conference doesn't necessarily give you the opportunity to address everything. And so last week when we were here, you and I, we were talking about, for example, the removal of tuition at the University of Guyana, albeit it's going to be several months down the line, until 2025. We were talking about no public servant earning less than $100,000 in 2025. We were talking about this very $200,000 grant. While Ali said it was going to be distributed instantaneously, we later learned that it's not going to happen for another 5 months or so. And therefore, we're talking about the release of that $200,000 grant in the Christmas season, which the PPP is known to do. Give money to citizens as it approaches Christmas so that they can have a shopping spree at the merchant friends of the PPP. And so everybody is happy. Citizens believe that they got money, and the merchants definitely get money. Let's talk, Dr. Hines, about that tuition, because free tuition at the university has some serious implications. It's good for parents. Parents will benefit. Young Guyanese who want to further their education, get tertiary education by the university, they will benefit. It will be an ease on them. But what happens to the quality, first and foremost, of the facilities at the university, the quality of the services at the university, if it is that the university now has to be solely dependent on the government of Ghana for its financing? Let's talk about that. And in talking about that, I'd like you to share with us what is WPA's policy or likely policy on that particular issue.
Well, good morning again, and I did promise you last week. I know you asked me that question last week, and I wasn't ready. I'm an old timer. I like to see my interviewer when I'm interviewing. I'm an old timer, and I like things to soak in, you know, and I like to enjoy small victories and shove it in the eye of those who want to deny you victories. So the fact that the PPP reached for a policy that they, in 1993, got rid of, we need to make that very clear. And it's very important sometimes to do that. There is a letter in this morning's paper, this morning's Tablook News, in which a government spokesperson, Joel Bagwundin, is saying the Clive Thomas proposal for cash transfer was made, when Clive Thomas made the proposal, he made it for individuals, cash transfers to individuals. And what he was trying to do is to make a distinction between the WPA proposal and the PPP proposal. And in so doing, he sought to distort the WPA's proposal. So it's sometimes very important not to rush things, you know, to take your time, let it soak in to people, because people are inundated with information, especially on social media. And sometimes you have to go a little bit easy. So if I sounded rude last week for not addressing this issue, I apologize. But I felt that our people needed to digest the fact that the PPP has borrowed or stolen proposals from the opposition. And of course, that has sunk in. Because, like I said, what Bagundin is doing this morning is to try to say, well, we didn't steal Clive Thomas' proposal. Our proposal is for household, and Thomas' proposal is for individuals. And I said, David Hines, you are right. These scoundrels, you know, are devious. But anyhow, I needed to make that introduction. Now, as far as the tuition is concerned, it is welcome, because poor people, especially poor people, would not be able to send their children to university if they have to pay the fees. And so therefore, when one hears that the government is subsidizing tuition, you have to embrace it, because it is something that is going to benefit poor people. So we just want to make that extremely clear. I want to say that free tuition to the university can never be a PPP idea. It's a Burnham idea, it's a PNC idea, and the PPP has stolen the idea and tried to make it their own, and we must never allow them to do that. We must never allow them to do that. Now, tuition, like I said, is very important. Free tuition, it may not help well-to-do people, but certainly it would help poor people if they can send their kids to university without bothering about tuition. Now, you talk about the quality of the education at UG. I want to be very careful with that. Very careful when one talks about quality. Because there are faculty and staff at the university who are working under terrible conditions and are trying their best to provide a quality education to the students who go in there. So we want to be very careful when we're talking about the quality of education, all right? Because we don't want to impugn those who are there slugging away. Some of them are there for 20 years under the conditions and are slugging away. And I don't want to appear to be saying that they are not providing a quality education. So I just wanted to get that out of the way too. Now, we are in the era of oil and gas, and the University of Guyana is our only university. And we have an opportunity now to upgrade the university to what one may call a Research One university. There are universities that are teaching universities. They pay a lot of attention to the teaching, and UG can be considered a teaching university, where emphasis is placed on teaching and providing the students with the best instruction that they can get. And as I said at the beginning, one has to be thankful that people are slugging away there, teaching as best as they can. I know a lot of the faculty there, and they're excellent teachers. And I am certain that they are providing a quality education to those who are there No. But that quality of education that high quality of education can get even higher if one invests in upgrading the university. So you want to move the university from not just simply a teaching university, but a research one university, where faculty are encouraged to engage in more research. It is very difficult at the University of Guyana to do research. The library, for example, needs upgrading. Faculty needs access to journals. They need access to books. These days, so sometimes I have friends at the University of Guyana who are teaching there who would ask me to access publications for them from major journals because UG is not able to subscribe to those journals. So faculty doesn't have access to them. My university, for example, subscribes to all the journals. So, you plunge in, you're from X university and you get access to the first class academic journals, the latest research, the latest publications, and so on. Our colleagues at the University of Guyana do not get that access through the university. So one of the things that one has to do first and foremost is to upgrade the library, not just having the physical books, but that one through the library can get access to the latest journals, to the latest documentaries, and so on and so forth. That would benefit both the faculty and the students. And it will help the faculty to be able to guide the students to the latest publications and research in their areas of study. So that is one of the things the WPA will propose to do as part of the upgrade of the university. The physical condition of the university needs upgrading. We hear stories of toilets not working properly, fans not working. I don't know if they have AC in classrooms. But in this time of global warming, we see the heat out there. Imagine at a university, you go into a classroom that doesn't have AC under those conditions. Learning is as tedious as any form of labor, because learning and teaching, they are part of labor. And I think from kindergarten right up to university, we should have classrooms, and not you have a big building and you have blackboards separating classes. We should have classrooms, and those classrooms should be upgraded. They should be comfortable. And like I said, this should happen at the pre-university level. We talked about the university this morning. So you want an upgrade of the physical infrastructure at the university. Modern classrooms. You go into a university classroom, you want to have access to computers. The computers should be hooked up to Wi-Fi. They should be hooked up so that the faculty and students can show documentaries. They can access documentaries. There must be state-of-the-art classrooms that makes teaching, lecturing much easier. So we would upgrade the physical infrastructure to bring the classrooms to state-of-the-art classrooms. Perhaps the first thing we will do is what we need to do for teachers from kindergarten right up to university, and for all public servants, and that is to increase wages. WPA would, as a first step, as we would do for teachers in the pre-university, at the pre-university level, meaning high school, primary school, etc., is to bring our faculty at the University of Guyana bring their salaries up on par with what is paid at the universities in the Caribbean. And that is the University of the West Indies. We have University of Trinidad, and so on. And as a first step, we want to bring our faculty in line with the salaries of those universities. It is critical because people have choices these days. You know, in the old days, you graduate and you come back to your country and you serve, you work there. Now you graduate and you have choices in North America, all over the world, the Caribbean. And so our university has to be competitive in terms of the salary it pays, so that it will attract not only Guyanese, but attract our professors and lecturers of high quality from across the world. So salaries and wages for the staff that serve the faculty ought to be raised. So it's not just those who are teaching, but the support staff, those who are working in the office, the clerical workers, you know, the workers in the canteen, the workers, you know, in the library and so forth. Their salaries also need to be upgraded. So Working People's Alliance, WPA, would invest in bringing those wages and salaries on par with what people are getting in the Caribbean. So in that way, we will be competing with the University of the West Indies in trying to attract the best faculty from across the world. We would also try to partner with Guyanese professors across the world. Now, many of them may not be able to leave their jobs and come back and teach at UG, but they can take a year. If they're on a year sabbatical, we can bring them to the University of Guyana, pay them for that year, and let them spend a year there. Or we can arrange for them to take leave of absence from their university for a year or two, which they can do, and come to UG. So we try to attract the best faculty full-time, but also try to get good faculty who can come full-time to come for a year, 2 years at a time. There are lots of Guyanese who are retired. They are educators, and we can bring them to the University of Guyana and use their services. So we will up the salary. We will go aggressively towards trying to get Guyanese and West Indians to at least come part-time at UG and to help. We will also invest in the present faculty, upgrading their qualifications. At University of Guyana, we have lots of faculty there who are teaching with master's degree, some of them bachelor's degrees. We would make it a priority to send those who do not have PhDs, to give them scholarships so they can go and upgrade themselves, send them to very good universities. We're not talking about gold. We're talking here about sending them to prestigious universities on scholarships so that they can upgrade. Because if you move into Research One university, you have to have heavyweights. And so we're not only trying to attract heavyweights, but those who are there slugging away to help them to go and to upgrade themselves. We also would make the University of Guyana a hub for research, the latest cutting edge research. certainly we are oil and gas country. We are petrol state. We have the 17, as of now, we have the 17 largest deposits of oil reserve. So we're not poo-poo, right? We have resources now, and we would invest in research. So oil and gas will come to an end at some point. And Guyana has the capacity for renewable energies. We would make University of Guyana a hub for research in things like renewable energy. So we pump money into research and development. Research in oil and gas economics, for example, very important. Oil and gas management, the science of oil and gas, the science of renewable energy. We would invest in those areas so that the University of Guyana can feed in to the petrol state. The demands of the petrol state can be met through a viable and upgraded university. So those are some of the proposals that we would make. We would make, because quite apart from tuition, students have to get access. There are other fees, I understand, that you have to pay at UG. People have to have books, etc., etc. We would encourage the university and finance the university so that it can give scholarships to first generation university students. What I mean by first generation, people who are the first in their family to go to university. Like in my family, I was the first to go to university. And, thank God I got a full scholarship to do my PhD at Howard University. Had it not been for that full scholarship, I doubt whether I could have afforded it, or even if I could have afforded it, I would have been left with a large student loan. Thank God I got a scholarship, a full scholarship, because Howard made scholarships available. And so we would want to follow that model, all right? So that we have financing for poor students, in particular those who are going to be the first to go to university. So we're encouraging poor people to send their children to university. And we do that with scholarships and so forth. So we would invest heavily in that. So those are some of the proposals the WPA would argue very strongly for. And if we have anything, somebody's asking, how can I become a member of the WPA? Mr. Amsterdam, who's our organizing secretary, will deal with that issue as Equibian. Brother Kadaki, I hope you're taking note of that. All right. So those are some of the proposals in upgrading the university so that it can become a competitive university and one that can attract the best faculty, the best staff, and we have excellent outcomes coming out from it. Hello? See, when I don't see my interview, I get nervous.
Yes, I'm right here. Sometimes I mute the mic, and because I was responding to you actually when I said I am taking note of the question about becoming a member of the WPA. And so I just placed the link in the chat so that Esikebano could click on that link, and he's going to get access to the online application form for membership for the WPA. Right? I hope he's listening, so he's aware of that. Good. Thank you for that detailed response to my University of Ghana question on free education and so on. Among other things which are promised, among other things which the WPA addressed at its press conference, let's talk about that $100,000, $500 for public servants, or as a minimum wage for public servants by the end of 2025. Why 2025? And $500 represents merely perhaps let's say 25% of what an American might earn in a month. Is that really addressing the poverty issue? The fact that what about 42% of Guyanese live below the poverty line or just at the poverty line? $5.50 US people are living off of daily.
Well,
What are the proposals?
We're not even yet on. Sorry, I thought you were finished.
What are the proposals for righting this wrong? And does the current position of the PPP really and truly help the situation?
Well, one of the things with the proposals set out by the president is that they're not linked to any outcomes. All they're saying that, you're putting money in the hands of people. But what is the outcome you're looking for? You mentioned just now the question of poverty. All right? That is a medium to long-term outcome. But there is an immediate outcome. And that is how do our people, how does the government help our people to deal with cost of living? Cost of living, of course, has to do a lot with, the prices of goods and services in the market. And I think we all agree that governments, except if it's a commandist government, governments generally don't interfere with the market. And so the prices in the market, the cost of living, has a lot to do with the dynamics of the market. What the government can do, what governments can do and should do, and that is to help to make the cost of living bearable for citizens. And one of the ways you can do it is through wages. Of course, there are things like inflation that the economists will talk about, and I'm not an expert on inflation. And so for us in the WPA, our wages must be linked to the cost of living. Wages must be adjusted always to help the citizens to deal with cost of living, to meet cost of living. But it also has to do with whether the government can afford what the government can afford. Now, we know our government can afford more now than it ever did before. So for us in the WPA, we are not going to throw out a number off the top of our heads. We are saying that the economists must look at the cost of living, look at what the government can afford, and then come up with a figure. We know, however, that figure is not $100,000, because $100,000 means that the worker is constantly in debt. $100,000 a month. When you talk about mortgage or rent, when you talk about food, when you talk about clothing, when you talk about childcare, when you talk about transportation, off the top of your head, you know that $100,000 will not help the average citizen to mitigate the cost of living. So we know that $100,000 is not going to cut it. That is why we said in our press conference that a minimum wage of $100,000 is laughable. It's laughable. As I said, we are not going to throw a figure out here because one has to get all the data in order to arrive at what a minimum wage would look like, what a universal basic income would look like. Because ultimately, we think that a universal basic income is the way to go. Because when you have a universal basic income, what that guarantees is security for the worker. Security for the worker. So, no, $100,000 minimum wage is very inadequate, even without seeing all the numbers and all the data. We can say up front that that is not going to cut it.
Thank you. The question is the proposal. What does WPA propose as a livable wage?
Well, I just said that. I just said I can't throw a number off the top of my head. We believe in feasibility studies. And we are saying we have to look at where we are in terms of the cost of living. What is the cost of living? And what is it the government can afford? And when you take those two things into consideration, then you will arrive at a livable wage. We know that $100,000 because we know, like I said, we know what's the cost of rent, etc., etc., etc. And we know that if you're working for $100,000, you're constantly in debt. You're constantly not being able to afford certain things. We know that. So we know $100,000 is inadequate. But as I said, we are not going to just throw out some number as a kind of gimmick. And I'm not accusing other political parties who have thrown out numbers. Maybe they have crunched the numbers and they have arrived at that. We have not done that yet. We prefer independent economists and experts to do that, so that it's not clouded by partisan electioneering. Because for us, these things are beyond the electioneering. It's about, these things have to be sustained. They have to be sustainable.
Very well. And on the question of sustainability, Dr. Hinds, I'm glad you went to sustainability because two questions are being asked. Number one, what happens, well, is one question you can say. What happens after oil? How do you sustain the free tuition or tuition-free education at the University of Guyana? And how do you sustain the increase in remuneration for those faculty members and your citizens in general, public servants? How do we sustain those increasing emoluments after oil?
Well, you have to start by now investing in the non-oil sectors of the economy. Agriculture is still a premium for Guyana. Tourism is another premium for Guyana. We still have access to gas and so on. So we have to invest in the non-oil sector of the economy and make those the pillars of economic growth and development.
Again, thank you. Investing in the non-oil sector of the economy. I dare say that currently, from, I would say, the evidence before us, it is the oil sector that is driving this country, because in the non-oil sector's production all around is way below par. It has really, really decreased. Just the other day, I saw a publication which says that gold declaration, for example, has decreased perhaps about 1/3 or by 1/3 or almost a half over the last few years of the PPP in government. I noticed last evening the sugar workers, I can't recall if it's Blaymont, they are on strike. And I was told recently that Guyana is now importing sugar cane, not sugar, but sugar cane from Brazil to work the factories. Do you see us being able to improve those non-oil sectors under the current administration?
Of course. The
Under
PPP
the
is not. The
under the
PPP
current
is not.
administration.
The PPP is not showing improvement because that's not a priority for the PPP. The PPP's development strategy is based on investment, hyper investment in infrastructure. No, God bless them. That's the way they're going to go. That's what they're hinging their development on. We know why they're doing that. We know that corruption thrives on that kind of model. And so we are saying they do not have a vision for translating growth into development beyond investment in infrastructure. And that's what I'm
And how
saying.
risky is that?
If we have anything to do, we shall invest in agriculture, for example, diversifying agriculture. My interview is gone. I'm a conversationalist.
I'm here. I him.
I love to see
You like them children that the parents gotta stay next to them to get them confidence.
No. When I am interviewing, my interviewees see me all the time because it takes.
Guys, let me explain this. Let me explain it to viewers. Usually when I ask a question, I take myself off of the screen because I know for a fact that members of the mainstream media look to Camps TV for sound bites and video clips and so on. And so I'd rather know if they're going to report on something that you said, you alone are in the frame. That is the only reason why I take my camera off after asking your question.
All right. Good.
I'm always here.
Yeah.
Good. Right. So I was asking how risky is the PPP's developmental model?
We have beat that to death, Brother Kadaki. I don't want to waste the people good time this morning to critique that. It has not worked. If it was working, they would not have come with the initiatives that the president went to the National Assembly and announced. The very fact that they had to reach for WPA policy initiatives, for PNC policy initiatives, it means that their initiatives are not working. Their initiatives are not leading to investment in people and investment in the non-oil sector. It's a tacit admission that their policies are not working. And that is why last week I was so adamant. I know you ended the program and I came out by saying you're not celebrating nothing. And I appreciate that. But the reason I was saying that to our people celebrate, because it's a moral victory for us that obviously the PPP is tacitly admitting that their ideas are bankrupt and they have to borrow or steal our ideas. And when they're doing that, we have to let our people know that we are ahead of them in terms of ideas. And at the end of the day, ideas rule the world. They're bad ideas and they're good ideas. Obviously, if the PPP is reaching for our ideas, then we have to celebrate ourselves, pat ourselves for, in the first place, putting those ideas on the table. And the fact that some of our people don't even know that those ideas belong to us. A lot of young people don't know the cash transfer is a WPA thing. They think it's a PPP thing. You know, understandably, not everybody is tuning into a program like this. Not everybody reads the newspapers. But when a big thing like this happens and it's announced by the government, they notice it. And if we don't be out there saying these ideas originated with us, then we are losing part of the fight.
Thank you. And talking about ideas and the origin of these ideas, you mentioned that letter by Bagwandin, I think, claiming that the original Buxton proposal targeted individuals. At first, we know that. But a lot of people now are, especially in the light of this announcement of $200,000 per household, less than $1,000 per household, one-off payment. A lot of people are saying, listen, don't worry that household are nonsense, because when the COVID grant was being granted, we had household problems. Only people who were homeowners got it, at least in certain areas. And those areas were predominantly African Guyanese, and those areas were predominantly supporters of the opposition. And so the household thing proved to be discriminatory, despite the fact that WP's intention was to remove the discrimination by giving to households. People are saying, listen, we ain't able with that thing. Give us, each and every one of us, individuals, the money. Proposals have been made that money should be given to every Guyanese citizen age 18 and older for very many reasons, apart from the household argument, the ownership argument, the utility bill argument. There are many persons who do not live in what we would call traditional households because of the varying challenges of existence in this society. Why WPA has not, I would say, modified that proposal to accommodate this?
I don't know why we have not modified it. I don't know anybody has called on us to modify it. I don't know that it needs to be modified. We advance the idea to use the household because we think that it's a way of not discriminating. That is our major reason for doing it. The second reason that we didn't go the individual route is the cost, because the kind of money that we are trying to put in people's hands, if we go the individual route, then the cost will balloon. So take, for example, if you have a household of 3 adults, and let's say you give them 100,000 each, that household gets $300,000. Whereas, if according to our calculations, once we get to peak, each household will get at a minimum $5,000. So, in that instance, if you go the individual route, a family of 3 adults, and let's say 4 children, the 3 adults will get, like I said, $100,000. That's 300,000. But if we go the household route, that same family will get $500,000. So there are pros and cons to both approaches. Perhaps what we need to do is to do a hybrid approach, in the sense that we still keep the household, but there are people, for example, who don't fit into households. Take, for example, people who are homeless or semi-homeless. They don't necessarily live in a household. They are one-man army, so to speak. And so therefore, how do you treat them? So perhaps there is need for adopting both approaches, and so to do a hybrid of the 2 approaches.
Thank you. There's another argument that, listen, instead of giving people this money, take it and improve infrastructure, take it and invest in technology, take it and invest in social services. Is it that this money can't be given to citizens of the country as a cash grant, as direct cash transfer, and still invested in the provision of these services? Or is it that some people
you're
perhaps
really
are
asking me. You're really asking me to answer that. Look,
right?
Look, in 2022, Guyana raked in $295 billion in 2022 on oil. $295 billion.
This is Guyana dollars or US dollars?
Guyana dollars. Guyana dollars. Right? Guyana dollars. 10% as we are advancing. If we had started cash transfer based on our proposal for 10% and so forth, in 2022, 10% of 295 billion would be 29 billion, $30 billion. If you divide that by 225 households, because in 2021, the Guyana population was pegged at, I think, 802,000 people. And the size of the Guyanese household was 3.5 persons, right? So with the size of the household 3.5 and the population 802, that comes up to about 220, 225 households. And so that's how we came up with our figure for the household based on the data from 2021. All right? Now, if we were to have given 10%, take 10% of the oil revenues from 2022 and we give it to 220, 225 households, each household would have gotten $128,000. Jack Dio is using 300 households. If each household still is 3.5, then he's telling us that our population is over 1 million people. 1 million, 1.1 million or thereabout. Because if you multiply 300,000 by 3.5, then you're saying the population is over 1 million. We know that the population is not over 1 million. And so that 300,000 household is suspect. Is suspect. The only way that 300,000 will make sense is if the size of each household has changed from 2021. As I said, 2021 it was 3.6 persons per household, and the population was pegged at about 802,000 people. And so therefore, if we were to have gone with the 225 household, each Guyanese would have gotten, according to the WPA's proposal, in 2022, we would have gotten $128,000. If we had gone, let's say, with the 300,000 households, as Jack Dio was pegging, and I am leery about that, each Guyanese would have gotten 98,000. All right? Now, in 2023, we raked in $336 billion. 10% of that would be about 33, 34 billion. If we go with the WPA's calculation, 10% of that divided among 224 households, each household would have gotten $150,000 last year. This year, we are projected to rake in $554 billion for 2024. And 10% of that divided by 224 households, each household would be getting $246,000. So if you add up 150, 128, that's 278 and 63. If you add up for the last 3 years, each Guyanese, according to our proposal, should get a lump sum now of $550,000. Each household, sorry.
Each household, not each Guyanese, each household.
Each household, right? So the 200,000 is inadequate because, like I said, if you add up 128,000 year before the last, 150,000, that is 278, 246 this year, that is 278 and 63, $524,000 they really should be given if they had adopted the WPA 10%. Now, if you look at what we are projected to get this year, 10% to each household would come up to $246,000. I think there's a sneaking suspicion that the PPP has used the 10%. They don't want to say it because they don't want to give us more credit. Because notice they are giving 200,000, which is close to the 246,000. So I think they use the 10%. They use the 10% to arrive at this figure that they have arrived at. But we are saying, had they adopted our proposal of 10% and start paying from 2022 and give people for 2022, 2023, and 2024, it would be over 500,000, which is close to what Professor Thomas was proposing.
And it also, if I should say, pinpoints the fact that despite giving this 10%, the PPP still has a whole lot of money which they've been spending on infrastructure and other developmental projects. And so the short answer to the question is the direct cash transfer to households or even individuals is in no way stopping the government, or would in no way stop the government from investing in other services, healthcare and technology. And
no, because it's 10%. We're saying
exactly
90% of the takings. You see, we have been arguing with our friends at Stabrook, Kaitro News, for example. This is not pittance. I mean, we are slated to get almost $600 billion this year, more than the government projected.
And the other thing,
and 10% of $600 billion, like I said, is $60 billion. Now, if you notice, Jack Joy is saying $60 billion, they're paying. I spent last night, I haven't slept for the night, because I said, let me be a mini, an amateur researcher here and get with the numbers.
The other thing to point out there.
So they are using the 10%. They're using the 10%, but they're giving it as a one-off.
Well, I was about to say the one-off might very well mean one-off for this year, 2024. And so who knows?
Once they win, they're done with us.
Well, that too is true.
We
because
have
that's
to win and then make it a regular. And like I said, if we were paying from 2022, or we weren't saying start in 2022. I think Professor Thomas was saying, look, this thing can kick in from about 2025, 2026. All right? Okay? That's what we were saying. Because by then, we will have the volume, the volume of money coming in. All right? And so if we go from 2025 to, I forgot what the numbers project that we will earn.
Well, I was about to say to you, Dr. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was about to say to you, we can't necessarily focus on the year that Professor Clive Thomas suggested, because he also suggested a volume of production.
Yes.
And look at the rate. Looking at the rate of production, I think we've achieved and perhaps surpassed that volume of production.
And that is what the PPP is tacitly admitting. They're not saying it. They're using the Thomas. When you run the numbers, they're using the Thomas thing lock, stock, and barrel. That is right back when they came out and tried to pull wool over us and said, no, the household thing is not WPA, it's PPP thing. because they use our model to arrive at the figure that they've arrived at. We are saying this has to be a yearly thing. And if this year it comes up to $200,000 per household, next year, when we are projected to get an increase in monies coming in, then it will rise. And the next year is projected to rise, and so on.
And eventually get to that $1 million mark.
And eventually it will get to the 500,000.
It's $1 million. I don't know where you're getting 500,000 from. 5,000 US, $1 million.
5,000 US, sorry. 5,000 US.
Okay, it's 26 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour. At this time, I usually like to open up the lines. Is there any one thing you would like to address before I do so?
No, I just want to say to our people, I am stressing the PPP has no ideas to develop this country. That is why they're reaching for ideas. And it is not that WPA wants to claim cash transfer, because it's not ours. It's been used all over the world. Latin America, Jamaica uses it. A lot of African countries use it, Asian countries. So it's not our idea. But we are just the first party to come out with it in Guyana. And so in that sense, so we are insisting on quote unquote ownership of it, only to say, look, the way the PPP is doing it is not how we intended it to be. This is how we intended it to be. And if we were going by 10% of what we earned this year and divide it among the household, you'll be getting $246,000 based on what we are projected to earn in 2024. Last year, you'd have gotten $150,000. And the year before, $128,000. Next year, it promises to be more.
Thank you. The lines are now open. 6225933 is the number to call. You're tuned to the Guyanese Morning Time. I am your host, Kidaki Amsterdam. Caller, you live.
Yes, good morning to you. Good morning to all my black brothers and sisters in Guyana. Good morning, Mr. David. Welcome aboard. I have three messages, three questions for you quick. But let me say this, let me take a pen and say these two. Yes, it is fact PPP don't have no plans. And let us baby know that. And yes, they just take certain ideas from certain program like this program, your program. Because on this program, Flash Garden came out first and said that when the government changed, all senior citizens will get $60,000. Because when I do my figure, my mathematics, by the time they leave office, senior citizens will not get $60,000. If Mr. Amsterdam still get one more conscience by the word yes, he said yes, Flash Garden, right? Always saying it. But 2 weeks after, Jack Joe come out and said he would give $70,000 next year. Then the other week, AFC, that sister Fernandez, I believe, I heard she said, we are looking forward for this budget that the government gives senior citizens $70,000. But I said, wait a minute. Is this sister know about politics? Because you are outside looking in and you want to get in, you have to say more. If Jack Joe said 70, you said 80 or 90. That is where you just become a wise politician, not a smart politician. Okay, so my question to you, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
But I hope I noticed a picture on the screen.
Yes, we are here.
I'm here.
Okay, good. Now, I cannot explain why, because Mr. Amsterdam would not give me the time, but I will explain to you next week Wednesday. Are you agree with Flash Garden that when the government change, we will walk away from CCJ? 1. 2, are you agree with Flash Garden that when the government change, we must separate ourselves from CARICOM, we could be business partner, but not in CARICOM like other Caribbean countries. The last question. Would you agree with Flash God that when the government change, that you guys would come together and pass a bill, a law, that all male must serve the country Guyana? I said the max must be 15 years. And if they run away, it must still be there on the resume for when they return back. They must go and serve with hard labor. Thank you very much. Let me hear your answer this morning.
Well, the WPA is a pro-CARICOM party. We are pro-Caribbean integration. We contributed tremendously, Guyana, as a country. The PNC government under Burnham put a lot of capital into CARICOM. The headquarters are in our country not by accident. We feel that development, Guyanese development has to be linked to CARICOM/Caribbean development. And so no, we would not cut ties with CARICOM. We would work to repair the damage that has been done by the PPP. The PPP was never a regional integration party. They stayed out of the Federation of 1958 to 1962. They never supported CARICOM until they came back to power in 1992. They began to pay some lip service to CARICOM. At one time, when Pandey was in power in Trinidad, and there was an Indian president in Suriname, they wanted to form a Guyana, Suriname, Trinidad sub-regional group. So they were never interested in CARICOM. Their interest in CARICOM is that in 2020, CARICOM, they were able to use CARICOM to aid and abet regime change. But I bet you that if CARICOM doesn't go along with them in this coming election, the other election, they're done with CARICOM. So we must not throw away the baby with the bathwater. Never do that. The bathwater is bad, given the role that CARICOM played in our last election under the leadership of Mia and Ralph. But we have to move on. And so no, we would not advocate for us cutting ties with CARICOM. We would not advocate cutting ties with the CCJ. We put too much work into building those institutions. And we should not allow the PPP dirtying, sullying the reputation of those organizations in conjunction with some elements in the Caribbean. We must not allow that to make us walk away from something we have to build. We will have to renew our ties and our bonds with the Caribbean, with CARICOM, and with the CCJ. WPA feels very strongly that our developmental focus and trajectory must also be a CARICOM trajectory. We are family. We are family from the Middle Passage, come right through, right? And as Black Stallion said, we come on the same ship from the same place, and we must pull one common intention for we women and we children. And so, I'm sorry, Flash, we are not trending in that direction. As it regards drafting, I have not given thought to that. The WPA has not given thought to that. It's not the kind of policy thing that that countries like Guyana have embraced because we don't have large armies and we are not a militaristic society. And so things like the draft and so on, it has never been part of our conversation. Militaristic countries, the big European countries, America, Israel, and all those countries that are in many regards militaristic, the issue of the draft is a real issue. But I don't think we are there yet in Guyana. So we have not given it much thought. It's a novel idea, and it's worth considering for one reason, and that is that the defense of the country is ethnically grounded, that it's mostly Africans who are in the army and the police. And what we are seeing is that the army is now overweighted at the top with PPP / East Indian cadres, while the bottom, the foot soldiers, remain African. And in that regard, maybe the draft is a good thing to ensure that all ethnic groups, males of all ethnic groups and females too, because we cannot discriminate against females and say, look, you can do other things, you can cook, you can clean, but you can't defend your country. So a draft with male and female may be a way to get all the ethnic groups to contribute to defending the country. So it's something worth considering, but I don't think we are there yet. As regards old age pension, WPA feels that old age pension should go step by step with the minimum wage. So at a minimum, whatever the minimum wage is, old age pension should at a minimum be at the same level of the minimum wage. Because our old people, we are not the kind of society where you can retire and you get a big pension, big NIS payment, and so on. In a lot of regards, our old people are depending on the pension as their livelihood. And so I think the 60%, 60,000, 70,000 are woefully inadequate. Just as we feel that the minimum wage of 100,000 is inadequate, we feel that the old age pension that is ranging 60, 70, 40, $50,000 can't work because our old people are depending, a lot of them. That's what they're depending on to mind themselves, and people are living longer and longer now. And so the WPA is saying that at a minimum, our old age pension should be up there with the minimum wage.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. Caller, thank you for holding. You're on.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Gaddafi. Good morning, Dr. Hines.
Caller, you're echoing seriously. Are you in a place where you can't avoid that echo?
Pardon me?
Your call has a serious echo. Is there, can you go someplace else where it will not echo that much?
All right, I'll call up. Because I'm in a private room this way.
Or do you have it on speaker? If you have it on speaker, you need to take it off of speaker.
It's not on speaker, but I load the phone because I tried to, quiet place when I call.
All right.
You still having that echo?
Go ahead, caller, make your point.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't get carried away and run away with this cash grant. This is just a political gimmick and strategy to take the public off the real issue. I think the real issue where the WPA and the ESC and the PNC should be looking at is this corruption in the police force. More and more information are coming out pertaining to these top cops. And I think this is what they should be running about. Don't worry about this cash grant. There is ways of WPA, PNC, and APNU, if they come together, they could be this same cash grant price and do better, and people will run with them. So I think they should take full emphasis on the other issue. This is what PPP is trying to show you off these other issues. They know that when they come out of power, the US and other persons are looking at them and will touch them. So because of that, they're trying to hold on to power by any means necessary by shot. You know about these sanctions, and they're still, the Thomas getting salary up to date, and up to now, you didn't even hear in the US or any other embassy speaking about this sanction about them. So what you need to do is try the best to echo the other issues. This 200,000 won't put us know because it's still next year. They said they want to share it, but they have ideas where we could be that system, and people will go for that system for both. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your call. Lines remain open. 6225933 is the number to call. If you're looking for meats for the holidays, well, not for the holidays, but at least starting now, you can check out Ashton's Marketplace. Ashton's Marketplace is located at 72 Up Street Border, and you can get whole and cut chicken. Of course, you can get what we consider the parts, like liver and leg quarters and thighs and so on. Likewise, you can get beef, steak, and you can get processed meats like bacon and stuff like that. So check out Ashton or Ashton's Marketplace at 72 Up Street. They also do wholesale and retail, and the numbers to call will be 613-2332, 613-2332, or you can WhatsApp 434-327-3955, 434-327-3955. Caller, your life.
Morning, neighbor. Morning, Dr. Hinds. Morning.
Good morning.
Dr. Hinds and Brother Kadaki. I listened to the caller before that state that we shouldn't focus on the cash grant and focus on the corruption. And, Dr. Hinds and Brother Kadaki, we got our groups. We very much, as Guyanese, we very much interested in wanting to see the back of this wicked and evil government called the PPP. And we were reasoning in our brotherhood groups and things. We were reasoning the same thing concerning the same, concerning these areas whereby we could use and get legitimate protests, which would cause the international community to look into or the issues, and they would even back us in the struggle and the cause of the struggle. And that is why I mentioned the other day concerning the Sudan story, things like that, things like the corruption in the police force. Those are legitimate things on a platter being given to us that we could attack and even get the big wigs to look into the situation, because these things are things that happening. These is things that the evidence is there and everything. And that is why, in our group that times, we just come down a lot on Brother Aubrey Norton, because we want him to be successful because he is the opposition leader. You, Dr. Hinds, you the leader of a party. Brother Kadaki, you is an influencer. You understand? We can't come down on ya. We can't come down on Brother Nigel. We can't come down on them. Brother Aubrey is holding the top position in the opposition, and we got to come down on him because we want to see him to be successful. And the road that he's taking, I don't think that they would bring about the success that is needed, which is reaching the highest order of the country of being the president. So with a call state just now, I would like that you, Dr. Hinds, I would like you to echo the kind of sentiments on your programs and thing, and let Brother Aubrey understand that this thing is very serious, because this people is so wicked that they will do anything to remain in power. You understand? We have a lot of burning issues where the evidence is so clear, and it's sad to know that our opposition leader are doing is just using platform or what the thing gave the programs that they get just to say these things, and we could carry these things in action and bring about and put some squeeze into the people, which would even excite the support base, and we get something to run on that we could be able to win a successful election, because we can't afford to lose this election. We can't afford it at times, and Brother Kadak. Can't afford it. It's not going to be good for us. Because if these people go in and say, no, they would never stop at nothing. They would never ever stop that. They hear some black guy get beat up in the stadium and hear that it's being gone by some other Indian brothers and here's being gone things. No, these people not stop at nothing. And we got to put a chip because the government got them like that. The government is creating the situation because they know that it will help them to stay. This is how they see it, to stay in power. You understand? So I do echo the sentiment what the brother say that we should focus on the corruption, should bang them, and there is a winning strategy. Thank you very much for your time, brother Kadaki and Dr. Hines.
Thank you for your call. Dr. Hines, anything you want to say?
Well, yeah, no, the point is a valid point. But you know, when you're in the hot seat, you have to take a panoramic gaze. When you're out of government in a winner-take-all system, you are not at the table to help to distribute resources to people. And so therefore, the traditional thing is not to help the government to distribute resources to people because the government will take credit for it and so on and so forth. So, you know, parties usually wait until they get into office and then they fight for resources to go to their supporters. I think that model...
First, the place to be is at Club Twilight.
Sorry.
You're truly Trinidad madman.
Sorry.
Coming to Guyana for the first time live.
Good. Sorry about that.
I think that model has to be altered slightly. I think we are noticing that I don't think the PPP is pilfering, taking away great support from us. I don't think that for a second. But do not underestimate. We should not underestimate the capacity of government when they have a lot of money like this government has, and to use that money to at least mollify your supporters, at least to neutralize them. Because I don't think they're going to get our supporters in any great numbers, but they will neutralize them if they can say, we are the ones who are responsible for you getting these resources. And so therefore, there's a way in which we have to concentrate on pressuring the government, but we have to have the capacity that when we pressure them to do like what they're doing now, cash transfer, free education, which are all ideas, when we pressure them, we have to have the capacity now to own them and to say, it's we who are giving our people the cash transfer. It is we who are giving our people free education at the university level because we force the government to do it. So we have to own these things. So I hear the callers that we have to focus on corruption and other things that I do agree that we have to focus on them. But if we can demonstrate to our supporters, and even those who are not our supporters, that look, we are not in government and we are able to influence the government, because this government didn't have cash transfer in the budget. They weren't talking about cash transfer up to last week, Wednesday. And they obviously are reacting to the popularity of our resources. They obviously are responding to the soundness of our resources. And we have to be able to let our people know that look, we are out of government. We can't give you anything, but we can influence the government to give you. Now they're going to give you 1/10 or a quarter of what they ought to give you, but we are responsible for that quarter. And when we get into power, we will give you the 3/4 and more. All right? So I think we have to go down both roads. I think it's important that we let our people, because look, the way in which our people are hurting, we can't wait until next year when we get into power. You know, we have to demonstrate to them that we can fight for them to get something now. 200,000 is not a lot of money, but for a lot of people, it's good money. It may not be a lot of money, but they can take that 200,000, you know, and they can buy, put down on something that they want. They can repair the house. You know, they can even use that 200,000 as collateral. So although 200,000 is any big money and that we intend to give more than that, we must own it and say we are the ones who influence. The government said, Jack Dio said, that cash transfer is technically unsound. We live to see them implementing a technically unsound idea. Lebe Mouth said that cash transfer will break up families and turn Guyanese into parasites. We live to see that they are implementing the things that they cry all kind of nasty tears on. So we have to do both, comrades. We have to stress, pay attention to corruption, pay attention to bad governance, pay attention to extrajudicial killing, pay attention to all those issues. But we must also be able to go to our people and say, we are not in government. We don't control the purse strings, but we were able to push this nasty government to give you some resources.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you for holding your life.
Good morning, Dr. Hinds. A couple of quick analysis and question here. Now, when it comes to the census, 2012, I believe, census was taken. What's the population size from the 2020 census, 2012 census? And then we have, I believe the census was taken in 2022. And up to now, no results. Now, I am not pleased with the combined opposition in reference to, pressing and getting the information out to the people as far as the census. So what we are hearing now is numbers floating all over the place. So again, why isn't it we are always behind the 8 ball when it comes to these issues? Is that we are playing catch up over and over. So it's the combined opposition's job to get all of this information, get it from wherever it needs to be gotten from, and present it to the people that the PPP, this racist mafia PPP, is holding back on the census possibly, and not providing us accurate information in how much people there is in Guyana. I agree with a couple of callers with the corruptions, and I said that last week. I mean, we are harping on the $200,000, and we're, the corruption issue is kind of like off the table and take a back border. And we just have to do, I believe, both. So the question for you guys and for Guyana is, in the Freedom of Information Act, I think that's what we've got to use, and what is the process for if citizens can get information, or it have to go to Parliament. And that's the question that I've had for you guys to see if you can answer.
Thank you, caller. Dr. Hinds, give me a minute if you're going to respond. As I say, we got bills to pay. We got to pay some bills. Come on, man, do your work.
Friday, November 1st, the place to be is at Club Twilight. Yours truly, Trinidad Madman. I will be coming to Guyana for the first time, live and alive in living colors, in Buxton at Twilight Sideline Dam for an event called Short Pants and Skirts. So ladies, all they come out in all their numbers. Twilight Sideline Dam in Buxton, East Coast Guyana. Buxton is going to be on a shutdown. So ladies, get all your short pants and skirts. Friday, November 1st, the place to be is at Club Twilight.
Thank you. Caller, you're on.
Kadaki. Dr. Hinds, we talked about ideas this morning, and one of your flagship ideas that you always have is power sharing, and I have been reluctantly sold on that. I reluctantly necessarily because I'm a quote-unquote memory warrior. But nevertheless, I think it's good for the country and not for individuals. So that's my personal. The reason why I was in favor of it is because as an individual, but I have to look forward for country. So I think it's good for country. But one an idea that I've had is that I think it will work side by side beside power sharing. I think that if we empower the local governments, right? Of course, the constitution may have to be amended here, and we empower local governments, and these representatives of local governments, they must not be ministers or not even people from particular parties. They should just be normal folks running for these positions and for their constituency and become parliamentarians. And like I said, they must not be aligned particularly to no particular party. So they must be just represented for the areas. So these people must be autonomous with the budget and the infrastructure works. And I think if the system could work like that, in where there are individuals from different areas, be it in the parliament, and then they put the budgets out there, and the ministers, whoever's in government, will have to go according to what is recommended by these people. And I think that they will throttle some of the corruptions, and I think that most of the areas that are being deprived right about now, they will have representatives. So those areas will get what is being for them. What do you think about? Oh, before I ask this question, and I also like to make a comment on your masterful thing that you did this morning, Dr. Hines, in regards to economics. You sound like an economics professor there, and I think maybe you need to school Mr. Jadu a little bit about economics, because you did it out so good. And he couldn't. He's hiding because he's not a real economist. So if you could, Dr. Hines, if you could say what you think about what my first question in regards to parliamentarians being from specialist constituency and not being tied to political parties or not being ministers. They just be ordinary folks, and they must be empowered with the staff and everything. So please, Dr. Hyde, if you could comment about that, or we could ask the questions, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlo.
I like, Kadaki, if I may, I like a lot of what the caller said there. And my book on power sharing, I dealt with what was called vertical power sharing and horizontal power sharing, or horizontal power sharing at the top, between and among the political parties, and vertical power sharing of power between the central government and the local government. And I like the idea of I like the idea of the kind of mixed system where part of the, and we do have it now in some scrawly way, where you have part of the parliamentarians are, some of them are elected through constituency, and some of them through the proportional representation. But I think very important is the separation of powers. I believe that government ministers should not sit in the National Assembly, that we should have strict separation of powers along the lines of the Americans, right? Because if the parliament, the National Assembly, is supposed to be a check on the executive. And when you have members of the executive sitting in the National Assembly, then they are not going to check themselves. So the whole notion of checks and balances disappears, because you have people sitting in two branches of government. I agree with the caller. that government ministers should not be sitting in parliament. There should be clear separation of powers. And I think it would not end the problems, but it will go a long way towards helping with the checks and balances between the government and or the executive branch and the legislative branch. I also think that we should have two houses of the National Assembly. We should have an upper house, and that upper house should not party members should not be in that upper house. Civil society, people's organizations, they are the ones who should sit in the upper house. And the upper house should have at least a temporary veto or a suspensory veto over the lower house. That is, if a bill is passed in the National Assembly, it has to go to the upper house. And that upper house can hold on to the bill, let's say, for 6 months if they don't like it, to give the lower house a chance to review that bill and send it back. Of course, if it's a suspensory veto, it's not an absolute veto. So after, let's say, 6 months, the lower house can go ahead and proceed to send it to the president. But I think we should have a second house that is made up of non-partisan representatives. Now, we know that the parties are going to game the system. They are going to, because they're going to get their people to go in to civil society. And so their people would be in the upper house as civil society. But I think that some genuine civil society people would get through the system and get into the upper house. So that's something there that I would strongly support. The other thing we would strongly support is that at the level of local government, that the local government seats in the NDCs, and hopefully we can get back to village councillors, the city government, that 50% of those seats should be contested by independent civil society people. So that, let's say, the Georgetown City Council got 35, 36 members or whatever they have there. 18 of those members should be from the political parties, and 18 should be contested only by civil society organizations and independents. Now, again, the parties are going to try to put their people to run as independents and run as civil society. But I think that some genuine civil society people, some genuine independent people could get through the system. I remember in 1994, if you remember, the PNC did not contest those local government elections in the NDCs. I think they contest in the cities. But in NDCs, they allowed independent organizations to contest at the NDCs. And so I think we should go back to a semi-independent system where 50% of the seats in local government can be contested by parties and 50% contested by independents and civil society. I think in that way, we could have some genuine power sharing beyond the power sharing between and among the parties at the top. The previous caller talked about the combined opposition, and I completely agree with that caller, but we have no combined opposition. Each opposition party is on their own. As you all know, the WPA has some difficulty with that, right? But we can't wring the arms of our colleagues in the opposition. We would prefer a combined opposition to deal with the enormity of the problems that we face. When you check the history of Guyana and the various authoritarian governments that we've had, at all times, we have always had a combined opposition organization, whether it was the PCD or the JOPP, which eventually became the APNU. We always had a joint combined opposition. This is the first time. And, you know, I'm not in the business of criticizing my brother leaders, but I think Brother Aubrey, and I've said this to him privately many times and publicly, that there is need for a combined opposition. Even if they just have to meet each month to take stock of what's going on and to put out a statement, we should have a combined opposition. Unfortunately, we don't, and I think Brother Aubrey should use the time left before the elections to try to put that in place.
Thank you. Caller, you're on. This is the final caller for the morning. I have a number of voice notes to play thereafter.
Hi, good morning again, Brother Gaddafi and Dr. Hines. I totally agree with the statement you said just now that you need to let the supporter know and that it's the WPA and with the opposition to get the credit. But what they need to do, sometime in your previous show on statement on the show, is to go out now, house to house, and meet your supporters, find out how much families or household are there, and also use that also to garnish now campaigning, so you would know that listen, this is the WPA idea, but we're trying to make sure that each household that we represent or support us will get what they deserve. And I think this is what they should be doing now. Not sitting down inside, but being on the outside, house, and building up back their support and collecting data. So whenever this crash grant or whatever do occur, that they know the supporter not cheating because they already did the addition. Thank you very much.
I completely agree. Completely agree with you. Thanks very much for that suggestion.
Thank you for your call. I have a few voice notes, 3 of them to be exact to play, and then we'll wrap up.
I was thinking that since, good morning, Kodaki, good morning, Dr. Hines, and viewers. I was thinking that since Dr. Clive Thomas is the one who proposes transfer, did he in any way had any idea how it will be distributed? I don't think Guyana is ready for a cash transfer in the sense of the financial infrastructure. I think it will be a fiasco, like the 20,000, 25,000 one-off grant. Is anybody thinking or figuring out how this money will get into the hands of the Guyanese people? I just think half the Guyanese will not say a cent. Is the WPA have any idea, since Clive Thomas suggests this is a WPA baby, are there any suggestion that the PPP can take, or if they took your one-off cash grant scenario, is any way we can distribute this money so every Guyanese will have a cent in their hands? Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Amsterdam. Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Thanks. Just a couple of things I want to comment on. First thing first, with this cash grant. If the PPP use the same policy that they use to distribute the $25,000, this cash grant is going to cause a lot of confusion. This $200,000 cash grant that they proposing to distribute. If they use that same model, it's going to cause a lot of confusion because a lot of people won't get it, and it's going to bring problems, right? So I do hope they're listening, and whosoever going to be in charge of this distribution of this cash grant need to do some rethinking and come up with a better model so that majority, or if not all Guyanese, entitled to that $200,000 cash grant. Second thing that I want to talk about is these young people. You know, I was watching some videos on TikTok where people was commenting on the the cash grant and also this tuition fee thing. But two of these TikTok video had me, I had to listen to them very carefully. One, there was a young lady who talked about the tuition fee and how it's, she praising the government and making it free and what have you and so forth. And, persons maybe comment on our video telling her that, well, look, it was free before, right? So it's not new and what have you. And so on. She was kind of a little, angry or agitated because she said, man, so what if it was free before, it's free back now? So one of the things that I learned is that a lot of these young people is, being misled and, it's either they don't do enough research or they just comment based on what they see. The third thing I want to talk about quickly is this, this gentleman was talking about the cash grant that the Minister Jordan was referring to. Instead of giving $200,000 a household, give every individual $100,000. Now he was saying, well, look, yes, and maybe it's a good idea because a lot of people wouldn't get the $200,000 because of some people have big families and what have you and so forth, right? And and then you will say maybe $100,000 might be a good thing to distribute. But you also make reference to the $80 million that the coalition was that the coalition received during the tender in office, and you was referring to like, well, look, you guys collect $80 million, and at least you guys could have started doing some distribution or something like that. I think Minister Jordan and the coalition, they need to have maybe a press conference or something, right? And really explain to, especially to the young people in Guyana, right? This $80 million and what was it really used for, right? Because a lot of people running away with this $80 million. Anyway, you gentlemen have a blessed and a wonderful day.
Thank you for that voice note. I don't know what other press conference could explain that $80 million. People believe what they want to believe.
Good morning, Brother Kidaki, Amsterdam. Good morning, Dr. HINDS. Dr. HINDS, your program last night was very, very, very much touching. When I said touching, it was very much touching, boss man. Understand me? So kudos to you on all your programs recently. You recently had. Kudos to you and Mr. Vincent Adams and sharing to the nation what is going on in ExxonMobil and this government. Big up to you, Mr. HINDS. Big up. Guyanese people must realize that this government is no good for Guyana, no good for the people them, no good for do business, no good for be president. They're no good. They're no good. They're no good. Just imagine that. We have three bosses in the PPP. The installed vice president, the installed president, and the installed attorney general. And all of these guys have different views. That was sure naturally, these people are running crazy. These people, they're bad. Guyanese, these people are some corrupt set of people. All of them have three different ideas concerning this cash grant. Look at my audacity. Something wrong in this PPP. Something definitely wrong. These people have corruption. All wrong of them. Left, right, and center. That you can imagine that all these people so corrupt like these people fighting for be president of this country, because I can't see three of them coming up with three different ideas. They look like a fool, like these people don't cooperate or they don't meet at a forum that when one person say one thing, the other two say the same thing. Something is wrong with the PPP installed government, Guyanese.
Thank you for that voice. So, Doc Rines, wrap up, please. It's 15 minutes past the 9 o'clock hour.
Well, two things I want to say in closing. One is that certainly at the level of the WPA, we are going to put the individual option on the table and discuss it. As I said, off the top of my head, without discussing with my colleagues, I can see a way in which we can have a hybrid approach. So we are not taking off the individual thing from the table. Remember, we said a feasibility study should inform us in terms of the scope of the initiative and the design. So we although we have put forward the household thing, we recognize that is what I mean. Like I said, Jack Dio is saying, if he's saying $60 billion, $200,000 per household, he's saying that it's 300,000 households. 300,000 households at 3.5 persons per household puts our population over 1 million. We know that our population is not over 1 million from the last census, and from what we hear, it's decreased. So that 300,000 household could be problematic. It could be a padding of the household list, just as though they've padded the voters list. We do not know because we don't have the census figures from the last census, so we don't know what is the population size. But as I repeat, 300,000 households at 3.6 person per household, that's about 1.1 million people in the population, and we doubt whether that is so. So we don't know. We don't know what constitutes a household. We don't know what measurements they're using. We don't know. We don't know. So we recognize that the household thing has problems. The individual thing, like I said, it's again, how many individuals individuals are adults in our population? We're not sure. If we look at the so-called voters list, it is saying that we have almost 700 and something thousand people who are adults. We know that is not true. So again, even for the individual thing, how many people are adults? So both models have their difficulties, have their flaws, and we hope that our economists from the opposition side can sit down and come to some kind of consensus on how we can do it. Now, here is what I'm getting at. Before I go to this last thing that I was going to just know, one of the callers said, this household thing, if they don't do it right, it could cause trouble. Well, we hope they do it right. And if they don't do it right, we hope it causes trouble. This is David Hines talking. I'm not even talking on behalf of the WPA, right? We want them to do it right. And if they don't do it right, we hope it causes trouble. We hope it causes trouble. Yeah. So we got to work the models out. I mean, I give the example of somebody like myself who has a household in Guyana, and I live there part of the time. Do I qualify? Maybe my household qualify because I'm not the only person in the household, so maybe they also qualify. But I don't think I qualify as an individual. So we have to work out these things. What is the household? Who constitutes an individual? Who is resident in Guyana, not resident in Guyana? All of those things that we've got to work out. So I hope our technical people get to work very quickly, right? And try to come up with a puzzle, because all three parties, the AFC, the PNC, the WPA, they have embraced this idea. in one form or the other. All right? The PNC saying 300,000 per household. The AFC is saying that they want to give to individuals a monthly payment. The WPA, you all are familiar with our proposal. Let the experts sit down from all three parties and come up with the best model and scope. Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. As I said this morning, we are slated to receive 554 billion Guyana dollars in oil revenues this year. 10%. If you go by the WPA model, 10% of that is 56 billion dollars. And if you divide that among 300,000 households, each household would ordinarily get about $184,000, $185,000. If we divide it among what we calculated the households to be 225,000 or thereabout, each household would get $246,000, right? Again, we don't know how many households. We don't know what's the population, so we don't know how many individuals are there. So these things have to be worked out. Now, I want to end on this. It's certainly not surprising to me and surprising to us in the WPA that young people in particular have latched on to this cash transfer idea. All right? It is not surprising. When Professor Thomas first floated the idea in 2018, we had the same response. Everywhere you go, people are saying, $1 million, $1 million. And then 6 years pass. And, you know, the child who was 13 years old, 14 years old in 2018 is now 20 years old, 21 years old. At that time, he or she wasn't paying attention to cash transfer. So now at 2021, they're hearing it for the first time. And I think what it shows us is what is it that catches people's attention. It is these ideas that link to people's belly, link to people's livelihood, that catches them. And in that sense, we have to say that I think had the combined opposition adopted this proposal and sing it every day, every year, our supporters today would not have been given the PPP credit for it. It is because the WPA has been very strong in pushing it. We have a small voice. The mainstream media don't carry us. They don't cover us. We don't exist. As far as Stabrook News and Kaito News and these people, we don't. Had it not been for social media, you know, nobody would know of WPA because the mainstream media don't cover us. As soon as the big parties nowadays, they give PNC more coverage. They give AFC, since Nigeria became leader, as soon as he sneezes, coverage, right? WPA doesn't get the same kind of coverage from the mainstream media. And we are the ones who've been talking about cash transfer. So it's no accident that our supporters think that is a PPP idea. So the teachable moment for us here is to recognize what kinds of policies resonate with our people. And the cash transfer resonates with them. That's why they're talking about it. That's why they're joking about it. That's why they're speculating about it. That's why they're bellyaching about it. For us in the opposition, we better learn. I think the PPP attempt to checkmate us here. They recognize that this is an appealing idea. And they take it as if it's their own. All right? All right? We got to learn. We got to learn in the opposition what kind of ideas resonate with the masses, what kind of ideas resonate with our section of the electorate and think. That is the teachable moment here. That ideas like the cash transfer resonate with man, woman, and child. And we need more of those ideas to put in the public space. Now, the UG thing, for example, like I said, you know, it's one university, it's a small section of our population. And so it doesn't have the same kind of connection to people's belly and their mind as, let's say, a cash transfer. All right? But when you begin to talk about UG and locate UG within the context of the larger society, and to say to poor people that, look, your child can be the first child from your family to go to UG, then you're linking UG to poor people. And I think that's where we have to strengthen our message, is that we have to understand the different publics. We have to understand our own public, meaning our support base. We have to understand their language. We have to understand their instincts. We have to understand what makes them tick. I don't think as the combined opposition, we pay attention to those things. I suspect, and that the reason they call people like me racist is that they recognize that race is a very potent form of communication with people. Just as gender is formidable when you're speaking to women's issues, in a place like Guyana, race is a very potent medium of communication. Not racism, but targeting people's identity, speaking to them through their identity. And our politicians don't like to do that. They run around because they feel they're going to get crossover vote, and so they don't use identity. So when people like myself use identity as one of our means of communicating with people, the PPP get antsy. And that's why they call it racism. But they know damn well it's not racism. They know what it is. It's a potent form of connection to our people. Just as women resonate with issues that have to do with women, or young people resonate with issues that have to do with the youth, so do our ethnic groups. They resonate with a communication that speaks to their ethnic identity. And you don't have to speak to it in a way that promotes superiority and supremacy, but speak to them in a language that they understand. And the PPP understands that. When the PPP says, we are going into the African Guyanese, this race they're talking, and we are afraid to say, we're going into African Guyanese areas, right? So the PPP keeps beating us all the time in terms of communicating with our base. But all is not lost. I think we're doing better today than we did yesterday. We'll do better this week than we did last week. And I think more and more we are getting there. And if, as the caller said, there's a combined opposition, and we skillfully distribute the work, some parties have particular strengths. Some parties can speak to young people better than other parties. Some parties can speak to African Guyanese identity, Indian Guyanese identity better than other parties. Some parties can speak to women better than other parties. We have to recognize the strengths we have as an opposition grouping and divide the job and get off this business of big party and little party and fighting one another and so on and so forth. But like it's a better day today than yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hines, and thank you viewers for tuning in. It's now 9:30. I have to go. Do have a blessed rest of the day. I shall talk with you tomorrow with Winston Jordan in the house. Have a good one. Goodbye.